Love has never been a popular movement, and no one's ever wanted really to be free. The world is held together, really it is held together, by the love and the passion of very few people. Otherwise, of course, you can despair. Walk down the street of any city, any afternoon, and look around you. What you got to remember is what you're looking at is also you. Everyone you're looking at is also you. You could be that person. You could be that monster. You could be that cop. And you have to decide in yourself not to be. The logic of despair is for me. You know, cut your throat, right? But there's something wrong, you know, someone who says he's in despair keeps on writing. Because the despairing man doesn't write. Anyway, it's too easy, it's too fashionable. I'm aware, you know, that I and the people I love may perish in the morning. I know that. But there's a light on our faces now. If you live under the shadow of death, it gives you a certain freedom. So I'm perfectly happy, hard as it sounds, you know, and relatively free.
Hello, folks. I'm not gonna ask how y'all are doing. I know it's not, I know. I know. I feel it too. Hey, Winby. Hello, Mr. Miyagi. Hello, Gamer G. Hello, Little Morphine Annie. Hello, Punky Gal. Nice to see your faces in chat today. I know it's not the easiest day to have gotten out of bed. How am I doing? Well, I think you know how I'm doing. I think we all know how every single one of us is doing. Howdy, howdy. Brother has checked in with me. I feel loved by at least someone in my family. That's really great, Gamer G. Hello, Story the Bard. Hello, Nicholas. Hello, Kermit Thompson. I'm scared. It's fair. Hey, Quiet Kitsune. Hello, Kiwi Bird. Hello, Onion Plug. Hello, German Cow JJ. Hello, hello, hello. Also, hello, Paladin Lost. I know you're probably checked out by now, but that's okay. Yeah. It's a rough day. But it is a day. It's a new day. And tomorrow's going to be a new one, and the day after that's going to be a new one. And, you know, that's the kind of the amazing thing about days. There's always a new one. So, I'll eat crow. I was wrong. And I'm really sorry, guys. I'm real sorry. But the world keeps spinning. And I didn't sleep last night, I'm going to be honest with you. I had to cry. Had to cry a lot. And then I had a lot of long conversations with my partner. You know, I'm sure a lot of you have had long conversations with your partners and your loved ones about what do we do? What the fuck do we do? And Well, I guess if we have a sizable raid incoming, I'll hold off on that.
I know
Story.
everyone is scared I am too as a minority, but we have each other and we can still fight.
Story, the Bard, thank you for the 2 tier 4 subs. That is incredibly generous of you. And you even got Daurumba in there with the gifted sub. Hello, Raiders. Hello, hello. We're
The
just
past is
logging on.
history, the future is a mystery, but today is a gift, and that is why they call it the present. Stay safe all.
Are-
Wish I could dono more Jack.
Are you? Was that a quote from Kung Fu Panda? Well, we'll get to what happened, Ert and Bernie. We'll get to what happened, but first, we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about how we're doing. Okay. We're gonna talk about how we're doing. Okay. And I know not everyone is ready to have that conversation yet because it's fresh. And I'm going to share this one more time because I think it's really good. And I think it kind of speaks to where we have to kind of realign our heads. Okay? I think it's a good quote. And after, in a little bit, we'll end on the thing that kind of snapped me a little bit out of despair.
Love has never been a popular movement, and no one's ever wanted really to be free. The world is held together, really it is held together, by the love and the passion of very few people. Otherwise, of course, you can despair. Walk down the street of any city, any afternoon, and look around you. What you got to remember is what you're looking at is also you. Everyone you're looking at is also you. You could be that person. You could be that monster. You could be that cop. And you're to decide in yourself not to be. The logic of despair is for me. You know, cut your throat, right? But there's something wrong, you know, someone who says he's in despair keeps on writing. Because a despairing man doesn't write. Anyway, it's too easy, it's too fashionable. I'm aware, you know, that I and the people I love may perish in the morning. I know that. But there's a light on our faces now. If you live under the shadow of death, it gives you a certain freedom. So I'm perfectly happy, hard as it sounds, you know, and relatively free.
And I want to share this because that's James Baldwin. And if you aren't familiar with James Baldwin, guys, he was a gay black man pre-civil rights. One of the leading voices of the time, but you know, he was a man who lived underneath, you know, laws that made it illegal to be gay. Made it illegal to be a homosexual. Died young. You know?
Been playing a lot of Diablo 3 and listening to metal today. Especially Ghost and Lordi. Sometimes you just need that kind of catharsis.
True. But one thing I think that really helps me is to kind of put things into perspective a little bit. Which is that a lot of people lived for a very long time before us in a lot worse conditions. And they fought really fucking hard.
Quick question. I'm on Medicaid in Cali and they cover FFS. Should I try and get it while I still can? Or maybe boy mode a bit for safety?
I mean, Stolas, I can't answer that question for you. That's something you have to decide on your own. Personally, I've been struggling with whether or not I should get bottom surgery, you know? That's been on my mind. And I don't know where I land on it for myself, so I certainly can't give you, unfortunately, I can't give you an answer for you. But what I'm trying to convey here is that we are in the unenviable part of history where it swung backwards. We had rights. They may get taken away. But understand that divestment of rights, that's not permanent. And that too can be changed. That we can fight to get those back, just as the people who came before us fought to get their rights, we can fight to get ours. And that is what we will have to do. And that will require organizing. That will require, courage. And courage doesn't mean that you're not scared. And courage doesn't mean that you're not sad. Courage doesn't mean that you're not angry. Courage can be all of those things and so much more. And take heart in the fact that people walked this path before us, and that we can set an example for the people who will come after us by how we comport ourselves in this time, in this moment. And I know that's some lofty, high-minded rhetoric, and you might be asking like what that means. And to be honest, I don't have all of the answers on that. I've just been thinking about it today quite a bit. Obviously, I've been thinking about how to keep myself and my family safe. But I've also been thinking about how we can keep each other safe. Okay? And one thing that I've been thinking about a lot today, my partner and I have been talking a lot today. Hey, Demon Mama. Hope you're holding strong. I'm doing a lot better than I was last night. I kept a strong face on stream, but I fell apart pretty bad afterwards. But keep in mind, guys, a lot of us older gays, older trans folk, we lived through not having rights. We lived through not having civil unions. We lived through we lived through our states or cities having laws against homosexuality that sometimes were enforced. Okay? We lived through it. We fought against it. And we won. And if we won before, we can win again. It's not fun that we have to fight again for something that we previously won. But we can do it. And take heart in that. And also take heart in the fact that to be slightly disparaging to myself, my greatest hopes this election cycle obviously did not come to pass. So maybe, just maybe, my greatest fears aren't going to come to pass as well. Maybe in our hubris, we are shooting, we are granting too much credibility to our enemies. We have watched them time and time again be incompetent to the point of absurdity. We have watched them time and time again fail when they had the power to easily achieve horrific ends. And so it is perhaps give yourself the grace and the space to believe that these incompetent ghouls are truly incompetent. We have a mountain of evidence for this. And I think that maybe the other part of this is that well, every day's a new day, you know? Every day's a new day. And an opportunity for us to move the ball forward just that much more. Okay? Yeah, a good example I'm seeing in YouTube chat, Van der Ven mentioning the far-right government in the Netherlands with a fascist leader. Fascists are incompetent. We've talked about this ad nauseum on this channel. And as Van der Ven points out, the fascist government in the Netherlands is getting nothing done. They are a movement of weirdos, of incompetent losers, of people who, were they to speak their minds at a party, everyone would look at them in awe at how disturbing they are. And that is not to say that they aren't going to do damage. And that is not to say that they are not going to make many people miserable. It is not to say that they are not going to do unspeakably awful things. But that is to say that the full horror that they are capable of unleashing will probably not be unleashed because they are incompetent. And to unleash full horror, there needs to be some level of competency. And, you know, just thinking about this, the things that they want to do are going to hurt the people that supported them. You know, a 20% tariff is going to eviscerate rural communities. Like, NAFTA was enough to turn an entire generation against the Democratic Party. You know, it closed down factories, you know, killed towns. But this type of change in our economy is going to, I mean, it's going to gut rural America. I do push back somewhat on the no political violence thing. Try arguing against taking out Hitler before World War II. Well, onion plug, if you're going to go that route, definitely don't talk about it online. You know, like that's the thing.
Thank you for last night. Also, I am wildly attracted to you, so that's mine to keep forever.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jupiter Quake. Thank you for the $25 super chat. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, how we organize and how we mobilize is gonna change. You know, you're gonna have to start talking about things offline, not in live stream chats, not in Discord chats. You're gonna have to take it a little bit analog, okay? If you're truly interested in like keeping people safe. And I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. I also believe that there is a tension that exists between the federal government and state governments. Okay? And what I mean by this is that in states that are blue, states that have established and long-term protections for minorities, for trans people, for gay people, if it is at all possible, you should go to them if you are in those groups. Largely because if the federal government does start implementing national policy, blue states will have some degree of protection, and that will, I'm not saying that that is going to keep you perfectly safe, but I am saying that that is going to buy you time in order to try to get to some level of safety. Okay? You will have time to secure yourself and your loved ones. You know, I live in Minnesota, for those of you who don't know. And Minnesota has had trans protection since the 1990s. One of the first states in the country, if not the first state in the country, to codify trans rights into existence, as well as LGBTQ rights. And, you know, that isn't to say it was perfect in the 90s. One example that my partner gave earlier today was, you know, in the 90s and early 2000s, she learned that there wasn't a good sex ed program in her school, and so she took it upon herself as a young, you know, gay person to create a sex ed curriculum and teach the sex ed class herself. And there was no pushback from the school. There were openly gay groups that put on queer proms in the 90s. And to kind of maybe give you a window into what things may be like, those queer proms were protested by bigots, by virulent, hateful people, who brought their own buckets of stones to stone those young teenage gays. But they kept having the prom. They didn't stop. And they kept doing it. And they kept doing it. They persisted. And we fucking won. We fucking won. And if those rights get rolled back, we will fucking win again. You know, we've lived through a time where being gay is illegal. We will live through a time where that right is being rolled back in an uneven way across the country. Okay? We are in dark times, but so have many people before us been. And if you are, and how old will all of us be when we win? 80? Dead? Maybe. Maybe many of us may not see the better world we fight for, but that was always going to be the case. That was always going to be the case. Fighting for Medicare for all, fighting for democracy in the workplace, fighting for, you know, decommodified housing, fighting for, you know, any of these things, fighting for an end to homelessness, an end to hunger, an end to thirst. These were always going to be things that we would have to fight for until the day we died. Because there are going to be people who enjoy the shade of trees that we plant today, shade that we will never know. But that still makes it worth planting the trees. And what do you think about some of us devs in the community building a private communication server? I think that would be great. Okay? Because that brings us to kind of, what do we do? What do we have? And I know a lot of people in this community do not have money. You know, most of the people who watch me are working class and just trying to get by. And I think we have to come up with a way that our community can be mobilized to effectively, provide services and support in whatever way we can. And I've been thinking about that today, how we can go about doing that. And I'm still not entirely sure about how to organize some of these things, though some of you may have ideas, and I'm open to them. And I want to open a part of the Discord for people to kind of brainstorm together. I think that would be helpful. But the ideas that I came up with are, fairly simple, but I think are decent. Okay? Number one, I think we need to assemble folks who are willing to transport, those among us who can't get ourselves out of states that are dangerous to safer places. That, I think, is something we have to figure out. We need to systematize and we need to implement. I also think that we need information, because if you're going to an entirely new place with no additional people that you necessarily know, then you need to know which places are safe, which places are, friendly, which places are welcoming, where you can find community in a new place. And like carpooling, but like across state lines. And I think we need essentially like a green book, but for marginalized people who are at risk and need to get to a place that has, at the very least, state level protections. Okay? And I also think that we need maybe IRL community, though I have fewer ideas of how to make that happen. And the other one is some level of mutual aid, though again, as far as like how to organize that financially, I don't know how to organize that financially and equitably. You want to make your own version of the Rainbow Railroad? Yeah, maybe we'll partner with Rainbow Passage. We fundraised for them. They do quite a lot for folks, but I still have to look into a lot of these things. These are just ideas that my partner and I brainstormed. It might even be that some of the damage we're looking at is to our education system, to the level of safety and security that gay, LGBTQIA plus kids in schools.
For anyone who needs one RN.
Charlie, thank you very much for the $5 super chat. But my partner was an educator for about a decade. And we have in our circle a number of other educators or former educators. And for those who, if change to the education system happens, which is likely under a Trump administration, then maybe like some kind of safe schooling network in Minnesota. Like I think that for my money, like going to Minnesota is going to be like a really good bet in terms of protection for marginalized people. It's also close to the Canadian border if things get even worse. And I think that cost of living in particular makes it an attractive choice. Because it's hard to find places to live in New York that are affordable, to say the least. Minnesota and Minneapolis has a bit more affordability. And also for people who have kids, for, LGBTQ folks who are fleeing who have kids, or Latino, Hispanic folks who have kids, there is free breakfast and free lunch in the school system. So there are, I think, a lot of upsides. And I don't know exactly how all of this will work. I am going to work on it more. But off the top of my head, stuff like this, collating information amongst ourselves to figure out a rough map of safe areas and places, I think would be good. I know that a lot of you have a willingness to help by driving, picking up people, maybe providing temporary housing while they get situated in a new location. And I think that we, as a community, have the ability to rise to this occasion. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can do it. Yeah, Cyrex, decent argument. But I think that we have to take it one step at a time, because I know that I just threw a lot out at you guys. I think having rough plans right now is good, but I think like one of the immediate things is getting people in danger out of the immediate danger they're in. Not ready for fascism? No one's ever ready for fascism. But I also think that start a GoFundMe. A GoFundMe isn't going to be like... I don't think that's the way to organize like funding here. But I don't have an alternative. I would like it to be more accountable, but that's me. So, these are some initial ideas. Yeah, we need an accounting guy. Exactly. We need spreadsheets, goddammit. I started to try to do this a year ago. This actually angers me. I tried to get something exactly like this, a queer green book, started, and not enough interest was gathered in DSA. Maybe we need to recruit a contingent of folks to DSA specifically for that project. Maybe we can recruit them from our community. Okay? I'll work on organizing a part of the Discord specifically around preparing us for the next several years. Maybe the mod team can start trying to figure out how to organize this, because I am a bit out of my depth. Are we still not drinking the Drano yet? No, there's like the clip from James Baldwin says, there's a certain freedom in being under threat. I'm a spreadsheet buy. Nice. We'll need all the help we can get. I've got the concept of a plan. Nice. And I think that by engaging with community organizing within our community, I think that we can do a lot to help both people in our community and also people, on the outskirts of our community, friends, relatives. Okay? Can't really argue against that. It should be a first priority, especially for the disabled among us. Yeah, I agree. Anything on the Discord would have to be absolutely private. Yeah, I'm thinking like just how we vet certain parts of the Discord, we'd have to vet parts of the organizing part of the organizing Discord too. So, all of that being said, I also think we need resources on stuff like do-it-yourself HRT. I think we need resources when it comes to a whole lot of things. We need to collate data that is immediately useful to folks in our community. And I think we can do it. I think a lot of us are extraordinarily smart. And I know a lot of us are extraordinarily smart. Okay? We making our own party? I mean, not political party, no.
They've taken everything, even our fear, Chilean protest slogan.
That's pretty badass. Chilean protesters are different kind of protester. That hits different. Well, and no cash. I think it's okay to take a day to panic. I think it's okay to take a day to be angry. I think it's okay to take a day to be sad. You know, it's gonna, I think it might even be okay to take 2 or 3 days to feel those feelings. But at some point, we have to wake up, put on our big boy pants, big girl pants, big MB pants, and get to work. I doubt he will get barely a fraction of stuff done. He can do a lot by just doing barely a fraction of stuff. You know, it takes a lot of work to build something. It doesn't take that much work to destroy something. Can I take all of those days off this week? You certainly can, Speaker Wiggin. I know a lot of folks aren't going to really feel up to doing things until next week, which is fair. I'm still depressed. You're allowed to be depressed. Just don't allow that depression to lull you into inaction. Inaction is death. I would recommend people start looking into how to protect communications as well. Download apps like Signal. It's a very secure, encrypted messaging app. Delete Google Chrome. Start using browsers like Tor or Firefox. Have a good VPN. I recommend iVPN. It's not some gimmick like Nord or the others. Going into your phone settings and encrypt your SIM card as well. True. True. Holding out hope for the House. Yeah, the House is still technically in play, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm not going to hang all my hopes on the House being controlled by Dems. So, all of that said, guys, I want to read this statement from Bernie Sanders. Okay? I want to read this statement from Bernie. It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them. First, it was the white working class, and now it is Latino and black workers as well. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change. And they're right. Today, while the very rich are doing phenomenally well, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and we have more income and wealth inequality than ever before. Unbelievably, real inflation accounted for weekly wages for the average American worker are actually lower now than they were 50 years ago. Today, despite an explosion in technology and worker productivity, many young people will have a worse standard of living than their parents, and many of them worry that artificial intelligence and robotics will make a bad situation even worse. Today, despite spending far more per capita than other countries, we remain the only wealthy nation not to guarantee health care to all as a human right, and we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We, alone among major countries, cannot even guarantee paid family and medical leave. Today, despite strong opposition from a majority of Americans, we continue to spend billions funding the extremist Netanyahu government's all-out war against the Palestinian people, which has led to the horrific humanitarian disaster of mass malnutrition and the starvation of thousands of children. Will the big money interests and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party learn any real lessons from this disastrous campaign? Will they understand the pain and political alienation that tens of millions of Americans are experiencing? Do they have any idea as to how we can take on the increasingly powerful oligarchy which has so much economic and political power? Probably not. In the coming weeks and months, those of us concerned about grassroots democracy and economic justice will have to have some very serious political discussions. Stay tuned. He's talking to us, chat. This is the serious political discussion. Organizing independently and doing for ourselves what those in power do not do for us. And maybe, if we build a movement, if we build a community that is capable of doing what we need it to do to keep people safe and to provide for one another, maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to expand that movement beyond our own community borders. Maybe we'll be able to help other people too, but we got to get ourselves off the ground first. Okay? Do you think there's any shot at free and fair elections after this? I think it's possible. I think it is possible. Which also means that there's the possibility that there might not be. So, with that, I wanna share the thing that really kind of got me today, and we might get struck with DMCA for this. So I'm going to just play it without the visual on screen. If you forgive me, okay?
Here's what we know. Is that we don't really know anything, and that we're going to come out of this election and we're going to make all kind of pronouncements about what this country is and what this world is. And the truth is, we're not really going to know shit. And we're going to make it seem like this is the finality of our civilization and this and thing. We're all going to have to wake up tomorrow morning and work like hell to move the world to the place that we prefer it to be. And I just want to point out, just as a matter of perspective, that the lessons that our pundits take away from these results, that they will pronounce with certainty, will be wrong. And we have to remember that. If you're in 2008, when Barack Obama won,
there's no question that this is the beginning, the first election of the future, really. And I think we are moving towards a post-racial America.
Yeah, that lasted a day. And then, of course, in 2012, Obama won again. And the lesson was,
the GOP needs to send a powerful signal to Hispanic voters that the party respects them.
That was the lesson they learned after that victory. And they were certain of it. And send a powerful signal to the Hispanic community, the GOP did.
When Mexico sends its people, they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Which apparently was the winning message. And that taught Democrats in 2016 what?
Maybe what the Democrats will be looking for is somebody with some inside experience, but who's a generation younger.
It's obviously going to be younger. It's going to be from a new generation.
Need I say it?
It's a great honor and humility. I accept this nomination.
And that turned out to be a winning message again, which led to an insurrection. And the lesson from that was,
when Donald Trump leaves office on Wednesday morning, he will leave Washington a pariah. Donald Trump will never be allowed to set foot in the Capitol again. Never.
Ever. My point is this.
It is true. He said fuck. He said fuck, guys. He said fuck. That's what I was saying. He said fuck. And is this part of the bit? It's not part of the bit, but he said fuck. And I have to let you guys know that, like, liberals have failed us. Liberals have failed us. Every single time that they have lost, they have come to the exact wrong conclusion about why they lost. And in fact, you can see that in how they are responding to the loss to Trump today. You can see it. They're talking about how we need to normalize rhetoric on LGBTQ rights. We need, which is, you know, their very polite way of saying they need to move right on queer rights. They need to move right when it comes to white supremacy. And we'll get to this. We'll get to this. Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. If there's any chance of another election happening, I will do everything in my power to make sure we run a populist leftist. Same. Guys, like, this is the radicalizing moment, okay? This is the moment where, you know, you need to look at what has come before. What has come before, and keep in mind how wrong they have been. And that we all need to, after we finish mobilizing this community for helping one another, we need to mobilize it for getting people who are not these liberal fucks into office. We need to mobilize it for people who are to the left of liberalism. We need to mobilize it to primary every single member of the Democratic Party that brought us to this point out of office, because they have failed us. There is no stronger, resounding message here than liberalism has failed. And it's very specifically because of the transition from liberalism to neoliberalism. Neoliberalism was the devil's bargain, okay? Neoliberalism was essentially injecting capitalist values, or even like hyper-capitalist values, not neoconservative, but conservative values into liberalism, okay? That's what we're seeing. And and if you don't really know what I'm trying to say here, I think a good example of what I'm trying to get at is Boeing. Boeing was propped up and heralded as a triumphant success of liberalism, of, you know, capitalism contained by egalitarianism, by rule of law, by regulation, you know, in the post-New Deal era. And you want to know what happened? The people who ran Boeing wound up, well, the liberals who ran it, the liberal capitalists who ran it, wound up being replaced by people who looked at the company and said, what if instead of having functional airplanes, we just cut corners and cut corners and cut corners? And every time we cut corners in this company, we hollowed it out in order to give our stockholders more and more and more and more and more money. What if we did that? And now Boeing has airplanes that literally fall out of the sky. Neoliberalism, this essentially devil's bargain that poisoned liberalism, is the transitionary phase between liberalism and fascism. And I think that this demonstrates that to a T. Okay? This demonstrates it to a T. Largely because, folks, what Kamala Harris was bringing to the table was not reaching working class people. It just wasn't. Bernie Sanders has it right. Bernie Sanders has it right, guys. Yeah, Bill Clinton just threw a brick onto the accelerator and threw all of America's companies into the wood chipper to transfer profits to the investor class, to the ultra wealthy. And we've never taken that brick off of the accelerator. And I mean, guys, one of the things that maybe indicates this better than anything, this statement from Rua Roman, state rep from Georgia. I have a lot of thoughts, but for now it's clear Biden and his holdouts threw Harris off a glass cliff. I place the blame on a racist inner circle that should have been immediately kicked off the campaign. You cannot compromise with fascists and win. Liz Cheney, Jeff Duncan, and others were never going to bring voters. They don't have a base. Prioritizing billionaires and Republicans instead of progressive orgs who do deep organizing work was a huge mistake. They're the ones who push back on the right-wing disinformation. Instead, they were iced out and maligned. This was supposed to be a historic moment, but many tonight are reeling and terrified of what comes next. All of us lose tonight. All of us. There is no good that will come from this. Because, guys, she's right. What won tonight was what won yesterday was a charlatan, a flim-flam man that sold a load of horse shit to the working class of America. And that's deliberately and directly a result of the policies being pushed by Kamala Harris and the communication around Kamala Harris not reaching the working class in a way that they understood. It wasn't until the day before the election when we saw Tim Walz enter a room with working class voters and talk to them and actually reach them. That should have been the game plan the entire time. It should have been the game plan the entire time. Because guess what, guys? If Tim Walz had sat down and explained to a room full of undecided working class folks what a tariff would do, what a 20% tariff would do to them, their community, their family, they would understand. But people in working class America don't know what tariffs do. All they hear when Donald Trump talks about a tariff is, oh, he's going to get rid of my taxes. Donald Trump is going to get rid of my taxes. And I hate taxes. It takes money I need to feed my family. So he's going to get rid of my taxes, and then he's going to make the people that made everything expensive pay my taxes. Because that's how that's what it was sold to them. That is what Donald Trump told them the tariffs would do. And there was no pushback from the Democratic campaign. It was mostly just kind of the typical liberal elitism sneering at the policy instead of in a matter-of-fact way, in an easy-to-understand way, explaining how that works. And so what ended up happening is that for working class people all across America, they heard Donald Trump is getting rid of my taxes. And he's going to punish the people who are responsible for making all of the prices go up. And then they looked at Kamala Harris and they were like, those policies don't look so good. You know, I don't. What is this means tested bullshit that isn't going to help me? You know. And so, I mean, like that is by and large the only way I can really make sense of this kind of shift in American politics. This is a terrifying map. But I want to really hammer this home. This is not a map that shows America, like, hating progressive policies or politics. This is a map that shows people who have been economically damaged and destroyed waking up and deciding that they are going to go with the person that seems like actually spoke to them. They do hate progressivism? They don't. In a lot of these states that voted red, they voted in favor of abortion rights. They voted against party lines for abortion. They want higher minimum
Jack,
wage.
Thank you for keeping your head straight throughout all of this. I know it couldn't have been easy, so I really appreciate someone taking this seriously and talking about what comes next.
Yeah, Montana saved abortion rights, and it's a conservative state. Like, what I need you all to understand is that what you're seeing in this map is by and large a bunch of working class people who were sold a very simple message. We'll make your taxes go away, and we'll make the people who harmed your standard of living pay for it. And then, in a feat of just kind of street magic, their attention was redirected towards people that make them feel weird or uncomfortable. Okay? That's what happened. This is not a rare phenomenon. This has been going on for hundreds of years. After the Civil War, when black workers and white workers were in the same economic class, at least among the working class, bosses divided workers against each other by race, specifically so that they wouldn't be able to identify the real problem, which was that the boss was taking advantage of both of them. What we're seeing is just that on a national scale, guys. And the real thing here is that while you can find, insane transphobic bigots and insane racists, most of the people in those places are not those things. I know that might seem counterintuitive, but most of them are just people who have been told, these people that make you feel a little weird because they're different, they're partly to blame for your problems. So you're saying capitalism caused racism? Capitalism exacerbates racism, yes. They've been manipulated. Yeah, people need to be taught to hate people different than them. Okay? And the thing I need to maybe talk about a little bit is that there are people in these deeply red conservative areas that are gay or trans and who live in those areas, and they, by and large, live without being bothered. Because for the most part, the common people in these areas don't care that much about trans people or gay people. Now, of course, there are going to be outliers who do. And that's what kind of makes it more dangerous for trans and gay people or minority folks in these areas. But the majority of people don't care that much. Which is a double-edged sword, you know? Yeah, most of these people just want to be able to feed their families. And what I'm trying, don't think it excuses it. I and most people I know are poor. Hating other people because you're mad about your economic status is still a choice. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not a choice. But I am saying that it's less driven by hate and more driven by, you know, lack of curiosity. And an authority figure told them that they, you know, they should feel this way about people that are different than them. It is less active than maybe a lot of people believe. Because ultimately, guys, we're looking at pretty clearly here a failure of progressive messaging. You can actually see here on this diagram when Biden switched from using economic populism to talking in more hawkish terms. And this largely correlates with a drop in support for Biden. And that drop in support for Biden is directly related to him dropping economic populism. Because the economic populism rallies the base. And you know what? It helps win back that working class in middle America, in those small towns. Like, I'm not saying material hardship and bigotry aren't related. And I'm not saying that, like, material hardship justifies the bigotry. But I think we need to understand that the two have a relationship, especially in the Republican Party. How the fuck do you explain to people that they should care about other people? You can't. Like, that's the thing. You can't explain to people that they should care about other people. So, you have to appeal to them on different grounds. You have to appeal to them on economic grounds, on what would improve their life, their family's well-being. That's why Medicare for All from Bernie Sanders resonates with these people. Because they know someone in their family suffering from diabetes. That they know someone in their family, or maybe, you know, an entire side of their family whose town got obliterated by NAFTA. They know people who have been directly eviscerated by the economic policies largely instilled by neoliberalism in this country. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. This is the failure of neoliberalism. When you are not willing to run on economically benefiting the working people of America, all that you can run on is virtue signaling, on making an appeal to the democratic nature and spirit of America on some nebulous patriotic grounds. And I gotta be honest with you, despite the fact that these people aesthetically like to adopt the American flag, they don't care about democracy as a concept. They care about being able to go to the grocery store and, like, you know, buy groceries in the way that they used to be, without worrying about, like, bumping up against their budget. And that is a more compelling argument, you know? And that might be disappointing for a lot of people, but it makes sense. It makes sense that at a certain point, these people like drop the value of democracy, because what has democracy gotten them? What has voting in these elections for Democrats, their historic allies, historic allies of the working class, the Democratic Party, what has voting for them gotten the working people of America in the last, 20, 30 years? Wages have been stagnant. NAFTA resulted in the closing down of numerous company towns. Walmart has slowly come in and hollowed out the businesses of their communities. And so when someone else comes in and says, actually, the real problem here are trans people, gay people, Latino Americans that you think are, undocumented immigrants, or China. Well, they go, America, the Democrats really haven't been doing anything for us. We'll try this guy. He at least has an idea. Because they're used to they're used to people not delivering. They were company towns. There are a lot of towns in rural America that only exist because a factory was built there. What about Kamala messaging on price gouging and help lower rent prices? That is the main economic grievance, and it didn't matter. It could just be vibes and nothing would have worked. I believe that, frankly, they don't believe Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was not messaging to them in a way that was effective. When we saw Tim Walz, again, sit down with those undecided voters, and he was able to connect with them and talk about the corn prices just off the top of his head. He was talking to a farmer, and he knew off the top of his head what the average bushel of corn costs in Minnesota, and they had a back and forth about the crops that farmer was raising. That is the kind of messaging that resonates with people in these areas. And also, Kamala Harris, time and time again, reiterated that she was not going to significantly deviate from Joe Biden, someone that these people already did not trust. And so, you're losing like leftists who like the economic populism. You're losing working class voters who aren't really all that engaged in politics, and you're losing the anti-war crowd by refusing to message on Gaza, something that a lot of the polling indicated was would have won over a pretty large percentage of voters. So, I bet money Walz would have won if he was the candidate. Maybe. And I mean, you can also throw in there that maybe sexism played a role, racism played a role, and I'm sure that's undeniable, but I think the main problem of the campaign was the economic messaging. She was talking to her donors. She was talking to her donors. There was a lot of, again, if you were paying attention to the campaign, there was scuttlebutt that she was privately assuring that her big donors that the price gouging thing wasn't even really that important to her campaign. So what I'm trying to do here is just kind of explain what happened, because a lot of people don't get it. A lot of people don't get it. Just admit this country hates women. It does. Why are you all interpreting the things I'm saying as if multiple things can't be true at one time? It is frustrating for me to sit here and try to have an adult discussion and then be like, oh yeah, well, you're not saying this thing. And it's like, well, that thing can also be true. But I'm talking about one of the main issues. Okay? Like, this is a good observation from Owen Jones over here. And this is talking about Jeff Stein from the Washington Post. Roughly 67% of workers rated the economy as not so good and poor, per Washington Post exit polls. A shockingly poor number amid a hot labor market, booming stocks, much lower inflation, growing GDP. But widespread voter dissatisfaction with the economy has been clear for years. Yeah. So this has been something that a lot of people in liberal circles have just been basically saying workers are just too dumb to realize how good the economy is. Because the metrics that they generally use to rate the economy all look pretty good. But working class folks are making less money now than they were 50 years ago. If you adjust for inflation, workers 50 years ago had higher wages. And if you have that level of stagnation, with the level of inflation that we saw, people were hurting. And if you're in a rural, like, dying town, you feel that. You feel your life getting worse. Rural folks don't give a shit about the stock market. They don't own stocks. Who cares how it's doing? They don't care about the labor market. There aren't jobs in their town. All of the jobs are in factories that are on the other side of the country or in big cities that they can't afford to move to. So a lot of this, and a lot of it also can come down to perception as well. It just feels like you're doing worse. And I think Owen Jones adds a decent bit here. This, above all else, is what matters. The U.S. economic model is bust. Wages for most working people have stagnated for decades. Either you offer an answer to that, or someone else will. But the best Kamala Harris could muster was, I'm not Trump, and that didn't work. And it didn't work. It didn't work. She had some economic policies, but they did not resonate with working class voters. They didn't believe that she'd be able to deliver on them. And frankly, it's not that surprising when Joe Biden dropped the economic messaging, 2.5 years ago. They haven't heard anything being done for them for 2.5 years. And that might be a perception problem to a degree. But they're also feeling it. So a lot of this just comes down to the fact that the messaging was bad. And I mean, like, here to back up kind of this point about Gaza here. In Pennsylvania, 34% of respondents said they would be more likely to vote for the Democratic nominee if the nominee vowed to withhold weapons to Israel, compared to 7% who said they would be less likely. The rest said it would make no difference. In Arizona, 35% said they'd be more likely to vote for the Democratic nominee if the nominee vowed to withhold weapons to Israel. 5% would be less likely. In Georgia, 39% said they would be more likely, compared to 5% who would be less likely. Like, they made a deliberate miscalculation, largely because, again, one of the parts of this story is that the people around Kamala Harris were Biden guys. They were Biden's campaign advisors. These were the people who led Hillary Clinton to a historic loss. These are people who have knives to have sharpened knives for years against economically populist ideas, waiting for another Bernie Sanders to emerge. And they guided her towards the most neoliberal positioning they thought they could get away with in this cycle, and they goofed. They fucked up. Well, that's old Dirty Dasher. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Neoliberals are conservatives. Neoliberalism is a conservative ideology. It is a conservative bastardization of liberalism. It is the transitionary ideology that gets us from liberalism to fascism. Okay? I mean, like, it is what leads you to this post. And thank you to High Progressive for finding this. This is from Kamala HQ. Pennsylvania GOP voter to Fox. I believe in Kamala Harris offering a seat at the table for moderate Republicans like myself. She actually has intentions of getting things done. And you know exactly how many of these voters she won?
I believe that, at least in Kamala Harris, offering to have a seat at the table for moderate Republicans such as myself, I believe that she actually has intentions of getting things done. I believe
there were like 3 of these guys. These are like the guys who were like, oh, she's gonna put Liz Cheney on her cabinet. Haha. I guess I'll change my vote. It was like 3 people. I assumed going into this that there was some very compelling internal polling that indicated that, like, you know, white conservative women were very inclined towards voting for Kamala Harris on abortion grounds, and that they were gunning for that. That they were gunning to, like, shave down this particular demographic, and they had data that indicated that would move if they targeted them. But they didn't. They didn't. They were just running a neoliberal campaign. And I see the question, neoliberalism and liberalism are 2 different things. Yes. Neoliberalism is an ideology of the 90s. If progressive economic policies work, prove it in 2 years. I mean, we gotta. But again, we have to primary these motherfuckers. Because the people who are going to be running in 2026 are going to take the exact wrong lesson from this. They're going to be running on more conservative ideology. The country's just going to continue slipping further right if the Democratic Party is taking that lesson from this election cycle. Okay? I think we need to come to grips with the fact that this country is not left. Even if we have better solutions, people don't want them, straight up. We're not the majority, and I doubt that there is any argument that will change that, unless you're down with Nietzsche. I mean, like, the thing that we're really... Wait, then why can't you infiltrate the Democratic Party about this? You can. That's what primarying does. That's why I'm saying you need to primary them. That's how you do that. Are we looking at apocalypse here? No. Perhaps we can get a segment on expat resources at some point? Maybe. Well, I'll do my best. I don't really have a ton in that regard at the moment. We'll see, TFRSB. I'm not super interested in being an openly trans socialist political figure, I think, or politician. I think that would end poorly for me, to say the least. Yeah, here is another good clip to play.
The biggest character in this race, to me, was not on the ballot in 2020. It was Joe Biden, in my opinion. Like, Joe Biden's refusal to do what he implied he would do in 2020 and transition to a different type of generation, allow Democrats to have a broader conversation about change, allow Democrats to be freed from the status quo, is not what happened. I think it would be easier for me to say that Donald Trump completed this mass realignment among the working class if we had a universe where the Democrats had a primary, where the Democrats nominated a candidate that was based around some set of ideas, and it was not tied to this administration so clearly and the status quo. But since that is not what happened, I think it has made the Republican ability to be the agents of change so much easier that I find it the biggest thing that has happened in this race. And I think speaks to what we're saying about what's happened over the last 3 months. The place that they were in before the candidate switch happened made it such that you could run a perfect race or whatever. And you are still playing on ground that brings you to 50-50. Because the biggest thing, in my opinion, that happened was they tied themselves to an unpopular administration and with it, the status quo.
That did not represent change.
And there was a lot of evidence that that was a bad idea.
I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Like, however you cut it, like, this election season was really bad. It was really, really bad. Like, Biden doing abysmally in the polling and then stepping out of the race, not having a primary, wound up fucking us. So, it was a big fumble. Will there be an election in 2028? I don't know. I think so. But I don't know. 4 years is a long time. Remember when the Kamala campaign and all the energy we had and the Clintons came in and took over? There's a big reason we are here. Yeah, I mean, like, the Clinton, like, Biden campaign apparatus destroyed the energy that Kamala Harris had. Destroyed it. And, you know, at this point, we're in so deep. Why not? At this point, we're in so deep. There was a really good... There's a really good segment on the Majority Report with Sam Seder that I just want to kind of share with you guys, because it is basically a summation of what neoliberalism is, how it was created, and why it fucked us in this election. You know, it's not like, this came out weeks ago, but I think if you understand what neoliberalism is in the way, in its historical context, it makes a lot of sense what happened.
Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. Joining us now, Grace Blakely, economics, politics commentator, also staff writer at the Tribune and author of Vulture Capitalism, Corporate Crimes, Backdoor Bailouts, and the Death of Freedom. Grace, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So let's start with sort of the central myth that you discuss in your book, which is that people often get wrong that the question of capitalism or not is one of the state versus the market. And this also dovetails with neoliberalism, but we'll get there. But let's start on this sort of like top line level.
Yeah, so most people, when you ask them, consider capitalism to be this kind of free market system. And historically, we've had this kind of opposition between an idea of a centrally planned socialist society on the one hand and a free market democratic capitalist society on the other hand. And that was kind of epitomized during the Cold War with the US and the USSR. And that narrative has really embedded this idea that capitalist societies are these kind of nice democratic free market systems where the production of resources is decentralized, the market gets to decide everything, and any kind of big corporations are held to account within kind of democratic institutions. The issue is that that model does not apply to actually existing capitalist societies, particularly the biggest and most powerful capitalist societies like the US, like the UK, and other kind of big imperialist economies. And the reason for that is that you neither have free markets nor real democracy. So when you look at markets, you see an immense amount of corporate concentration. So a lot of power at the very top of the economy in the hands of those, big monopolies.
I mean, yeah, what you see, she's describing the process of monopolization. She's describing companies buying each other, merging, from where there used to be like 1,000, 1,500 companies doing that thing. Now there are 3. And soon there will be 2. It is a way to control the market and thereby control policy around that market.
Holistic corporations. What does that mean? It means that the market isn't functioning the way that it should. The whole idea behind capitalism is that competition acts as a kind of disciplinary force within the market to make sure that resources are produced most efficiently. But when you have market concentration and monopoly power, that doesn't work. So you have that, you don't really have that sense of accountability and discipline within the market. Instead, big corporations are basically able to do whatever they want.
Her book is called Vulture
Then we look at
Capitalism.
democracy. This is supposed to be, the thing that we can rely on so
It's
that
very
ordinary
good.
people
Go
can
check
be
it out.
represented within our political institutions. And actually, rather than kind of real democracy, what we see is corporate capture of our political institutions. So the centralization of power in a small number of hands at the very top of our.
Yeah, the corporate capture, lobbying, revolving door of politics, where a politician will do favors for a company and then leave government to then go work at a cushy job in that corporation for life. Massive lobbying efforts from practically monopolistic corporations, buying government favors at a rate unprecedented.
Politics, and equally that divide between economics and politics, so between the state and the market that we're told exists in capitalist societies, doesn't obtain either, because governments will step in to bail out corporations whenever they're in trouble, and the executives in those corporations and financiers and whatever will spend a lot of time lobbying politicians to try and get their favored policies implemented. So you don't have this separation between the market and the state. You don't have free market democracy. Instead, in a capitalist economy, you have such a significant concentration of power that you effectively end up having this kind of capitalist oligarchy, effectively. And that oligarchy has so much power that it's able to plan in the same way or in a similar way to those kind of centralized states that we think of as the opposite to capitalism. And really what that means, and I'll give some examples in a minute, is that the mechanisms that are supposed to exist for ordinary people to hold elites to account no longer work.
Okay,
Yeah, because when you can just pay the fine for a crime and the profit you're making for the crime is higher than the fine, there's no incentive for you not to do the crime. That just becomes the cost of doing business.
There's a lot to unpack in that one, but let's start with, and I want to just put a pin in the question as to what being problematic about our system being the concentration where we are relative to like antitrust policy, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to start more at the notion of like a free market. When you say the market should, what the should you're talking about is the theory that has been promulgated to us as if it exists in a natural state. And when you talk about the false separation between politics and the economy, what you're really saying is that
Yeah, I feel pretty fucked.
The economy is a
Danny
function
boy.
of choices that
Feel pretty
we
bad.
as a society make that are being influenced by these corporations. So, let's break down that question of where we are in the trajectory of capitalism that has led to this monopolization, this quality. Like, how inevitable was it? And then I want to go back to the neoliberals and this vision of supposed free market, which that was never their plan.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, these questions around freedom and
Yeah, one of the interesting aspects of this is that neoliberalism is effectively a fiction designed to cover, well, frankly, growing oligarchical power.
like how the market should look are
Consolidation
important,
power
because this
of
is
power.
part of the kind of lie that we were sold, particularly during the 1980s. The idea was that neoliberal governments, so right-wing governments like those of Thatcher in the UK, Reagan in the US, Pinochet in Chile, they would come to power and they would create these lovely free markets that would distribute resources efficiently, that would promote human freedom, and that would promote competition, and that would make everyone better off. And this was the narrative. And, those of us on the left have always pushed back against that narrative and said, there are problems with organizing society just according to the logic of the market. But what I've kind of talked about in this book is how we're not even criticizing the reality. We're criticizing the ideas that were presented to us. And actually, the neoliberals never really wanted to create a true free market system. They never really wanted to
because there is no such thing as a free market. A free markets are constructed. Markets are we make markets. We are biased, therefore markets have bias. Kind of like the idea of like making a cold, rational machine that can think without the bias of a human being is not possible, because the bias of anything we make it reflects our own, and not only that, the goal of neoliberalism is not to create the freest market you can. The goal is to create a machine that seems free, but profits the people you want it to profit. Profits the worthy.
Impose competition on everyone. They wanted to impose really, really ruthless competition on the vast majority of us, force us all to compete with each other instead of cooperating as we had been through the labor movement, through kind of protest movements. But those at the top, the powerful, they were insulated from competition. They didn't have to kind of put up with this competitive pressure. Instead, they were much better able to cooperate with each other to get what they wanted. And the example that I want to use to kind of illustrate this point, and your listeners might be familiar with this, is the example of Boeing. Now, a lot of you will have seen Boeing in the news recently with things like a door blowing out of the plane mid-flight. Its workers are on strike. But if you look back a few years to 2019 and 2018, 2 Boeing 737 MAX planes crashed out of the sky, killing nearly 350 people. And in the investigations that followed, it was basically revealed that Boeing executives had known that they had manufactured an unsafe plane.
Oops. They did. They knew that they cut so many corners that the plane could literally fall out of the sky. But they fielded it anyway because they knew they'd make a profit, even if the plane wound up getting slapped with fines for safety hazards. Weird. Could liberalism work? You can just call it liberalism, and maybe. But my argument would be that liberalism and capitalism by extension is inevitably prone towards this type of consolidation. The forces of capitalism will always seek to subvert regulation by buying political favors. Which is why I'm a socialist. I think socialism at least mitigates that to a degree with democracy in the workplace, with workplaces reflecting the goals and desires of their workers rather than an investor class that doesn't give a shit about anything except profit.
That there were parts in this plane that didn't work properly, that senior people within the company knew about it, but not only that, the regulator knew about it. So the FAA was regulating Boeing through a philosophy of self-regulation, which is the same philosophy that underpinned how the banks were being regulated before 2008. And the idea was that they would never manufacture an unsafe plane because they would be hurt by their competition. Obviously, that didn't happen because
Ocean
they don't
Force,
really
no.
exist in a truly competitive market.
But I'm
There's
doing better than I
Boeing
was
and there's
yesterday.
Airbus, and they kind of barely compete with each other over price. Instead, they basically work to maximize their profits. And this is what we saw within Boeing by crushing workers, by cutting costs with the effect of making unsafe planes, and by developing really close relationships with governments. And the relationship between Boeing and the American state is so deep and so profound and goes back such a long time. I talk about it in my book. It would take kind of too long to actually talk about all the links that exist between those two institutions here. But suffice to say that when those two plane crashes happened, Boeing was the biggest recipient of corporate welfare in the US. So it was getting tons of money in tax breaks, subsidies, loads of support from the government. It had tons of government contracts. And then even after Boeing was found to have committed a criminal conspiracy to defraud the United States, so it had been held to account in the courts a little bit. Even after that, it still got a big backdoor bailout during the pandemic. So this, I think, exposes this idea that those at the top are really working together through these institutions that allow them to cooperate to basically, get away with anything. And
Like there's so few things for me to like add here because I feel like this is one of the most concise and useful explanations of what neoliberalism is that I've seen in my life. This is good. This is a good explanation, and it helps so much to explain how our economy is so fucked. And I think it really goes a long way to explain why so much of this country can be duped into voting conservative when it's against their best interests. And I think largely it is because of neoliberalism, because of this investor class that is constantly seeking to fuck over the working class and hollow out the product and the workforce to the greatest possible degree. By keeping wages low, by, automating more and more and more, and like putting people out of work, closing factories, all this stuff, moving things overseas. These are neoliberal policies. Sounds like neoliberalism is the ideology of a vulture. That would be why she called her book Vulture Capitalism.
pursue profits at any costs, but the mechanisms that should exist to hold them to account aren't working effectively anymore.
Yeah, the basic premise, as far as I understand neoliberalism, is that deregulation, technocracy, and like really will profit the upper class, will profit the investor class, and then trickle down to the rest of us. It is just the codification of trickle-down economics. And that has never worked.
I think I want to ask you if you think there is actually such a thing as a free market, and just reiterate. And I think hopefully this audience we've talked about it probably maybe too much, but this idea of neoliberalism being about free markets was a myth from the beginning. And in fact, if you go back to the Mont Pelerin Society, where all these guys, Hayek and et al., gathered and developed neoliberalism, it was explicitly for, we're going to, to do exactly that model of a Boeing. We're going to, we want to make sure that corporations have the ability to sort of like set the rules within a context of a certain industry. It was fundamentally anti-democratic, also against the sovereignty of nations in many respects. And it just was floating around there for 30 or 40 years in the wake of World War II, and finally landed. But talk about the idea as to whether we actually could have a free market, because I'm skeptical. Markets don't exist in nature. There's no such thing.
Anyway, I'm gonna leave it on that, because short answer, no. No, there's no such thing as a free market. But also, you guys should go and watch the video, give Majority Report your views, and like that video, because it is very, very good. Very good. The Dems are now just a screen of real social issues the oligarchy can use to delay the inevitable conflict between the classes capitalism causes. I mean, I think that the Democrats could be shifted to become, like, an actual good tool of the working class, but that requires us to roll up our sleeves and actually, like, get into the political machine and fix it. That requires grassroots organizing. That requires us to actually get up and do stuff. And that actually brings us all the way back to this guy. This guy right here. What's his name? John Oliver? Anyway, here's Jon Stewart. We're going to finish with the last 20 seconds of his monologue here. We don't have a democracy anymore. I hate to say it. And whether we have a democracy or not, it is incumbent on us to make things better. Sorry to say, the moment you became a leftist was the moment you committed yourself to making things better for the world and for those around you. Whether we have democracy or not, that's what you committed yourself to. So we can sit around nitpicking about whether or not we are going to have a democratic apparatus in 2 years or 4 years. But it doesn't matter. Because either way, our job remains the same. We need to improve things for those of us in the community. We need to do things better. We need to make things better. We need to make the world better. How are we to roll up the sleeves and change the system when the system is hijacked by Trump and designed to literally kill us? That's an excellent question. Perhaps best answered not online. And also, perhaps answered earlier in stream. Because what we have to do in the immediate future is triage. We have to save as many people as we can and weather the coming storm. That's what we have to do. That's our job. And then, when we figure out a way to continue our existence, to continue being alive, to continue fighting, then we figure out how to be even more effective than just doing triage. You persist just as every single one of your forebears existed and persisted to make you and bring you to this point in time. You know, for like thousands of years, your ancestors were fucking peasants, right? For thousands of years, your people worked the land under the boot of a king or a feudal lord or an emperor. I know that. Good! Then you know that what we have to do has been done before and we will fucking do it again. Like, what do we do? What do you mean, what do we do? We do what all of us have done before, what all of our family lineages have done before, and that is, we move the ball forward. It's not a fun task. And it's a task we may never reap the rewards of, but it's the task that has been given to us by this particular moment in time. So I'm going to play this last 20 seconds here.
But this isn't the end. I promise you, this is not the end. And we have to regroup, and we have to continue to fight and continue to work day in and day out to create the better society for our children, for this world, for this country, that we know is possible. It's possible.
It's possible. And because it's possible, we fight. It might not be, flashy. The kind of fighting that we have to do is, people getting in a car and driving for 6 hours or 8 hours to get someone to a place that is safe, where they can have their rights protected. The kind of fighting we have to do is figure out how to organize our information so that people who have been displaced under the coming oppression know which places in their new home are safe to go to, which places have friendly ears, which places have community, have services that they can tap into. These are all ways we fight. We fight by finding joy together. I want to help the Discord community, the mods in Discord, maybe organize viewing parties in our Discord to give people a place to hang out and just relax and watch a show or a movie or something. I want to organize our Discord to be a place where you guys can find a little bit of solace, because in the face of what is coming, joy is another way we fight. Love is another way we fight. And I know I've played it multiple times this stream. I'm going to play it one more time.
Love has never been a popular movement, and no one's ever wanted really to be free. The world is held together, really it is held together, by the love and the passion of very few people. Otherwise, of course, you can despair. Walk down the street of any city, any afternoon, and look around you. What you got to remember is what you're looking at is also you. Everyone you're looking at is also you. You could be that person. You could be that monster. You could be that cop. And you have to decide in yourself not to be. The logic of despair is for me. Cut your throat, right? But there's something wrong, somebody who says he's in despair keeps on writing. Because a despairing man doesn't write. Anyway, it's too easy, it's too fashionable. I'm aware, that I and the people I love may perish in the morning. I know that. But there's a light on our faces now. If you live under the shadow of death, it gives you a certain freedom. So I'm perfectly happy, hard as it sounds, and relatively free.
We lost. We lost yesterday. Feels bad. But today's a new day. Tomorrow's a new day. And every single day after that will be new. And an opportunity for us to win in however small a way or however large a way we make possible. So with that, I made a stew today. My partner had a really hard time last night, and we we went. Well, we did a lot of crying, and in the middle of the day, we we did more crying, and then we we went to Trader Joe's. And we bought the ingredients for a nice beef stew. And we looked around, and there were people all around us, you know? And life keeps going. People still need to eat. And as we were checking out, the people next to us, our cashier, the person bagging our groceries, they were talking about the election, asked us how we were doing, and we were like, we're doing bad. The guy bagging our groceries was like, yeah, I wish I hadn't tuned in. But life goes on, and, you need to make stew. Because you love somebody, you know? And it's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be fucking furious. Because we're gonna do our best to put one foot in front of the other and win tomorrow in however small or big a way we can. And if you're gay or trans and you feel really alone, one of the smallest acts that you could do to give yourself a win, go to a Trader Joe's. I know it sounds silly, but there are, the little gay people in your computer, a not insignificant number of them happen to work at Trader Joe's. And life goes on. Get yourself a little gay snack. And maybe talk to the people who are there, because they're probably pretty great. And I know that the world seems to hurt a lot right now, and that there are a lot of people in it that seem really hateful, that want to wish you a lot of ill. But we'll stand with each other, okay, folks? Because I think this community is pretty great. I think we've built something really good here. And I think it's time we start organizing to fight in our own way. So if you would like to join the Discord, riverboat.gg/discord. Just type that in. Or I think in... Does Nightbot have the Discord? Maybe not. Type this in. There you go. There's a link over in the YouTube chat. Why am I being censored? Because Twitch required me to activate automod, and it automods the dumbest things imaginable because Twitch sucks. Whew. All right, guys. I wasn't kidding about that stew. I got on to just say my piece. I might get on later to play a video game and just chill. But I really wanted to get all of that off my chest. Because it's been a hard day, and I know that talking with my partner and us sharing our thoughts really helped us to feel better, and I hope sharing my thoughts with you guys helped you guys to feel a little bit better. Feel a little bit more agency. Feel a little bit less fucked. True, Paladin. There is a feeling of betrayal from the 15 million people who didn't show up. Sucks. But we move forward. I guess if you liked the stream, hit the follow button on Twitch, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like the YouTube stream, and consider dropping those subs and donos. But we'll try and do better, huh? See, let's raid you guys. Raid you guys into Dead Domain. They're pretty great. See ya, folks.